like to welcome Vishakh to the stage from SDLC Partners.
Thank you. And I'm just gonna start sharing my screen. All right. So, good morning, everyone. And my name's Vishakh. I'm a solutions architect with SDLC Partners, and I've been over the years engaged very closely with the intelligent automation practice at SDLC. So what we've been doing there is we've been working with organizations across different sectors in financial services, healthcare, retail, and so on. And we've been figuring out how to incorporate process automation solutions and technical software automations along with AI in order to change the way people work. So for today, I'm going to be sharing some of my experience based on what I've learned over the years on how to make these process bots smarter. So when we try to address the question of how to make bots smarter, the word on the street and the question that's out there is, how smart is your bot? And the reason that question is out there is there's a lot of buzzwords going around, and everyone wants to incorporate AI. The issue is they just don't know how. And because of that, there are two schools of thought which have been developed. One is, AI augmenting human intelligence, and the second is AI replacing human intelligence. If we speak to any evangelist from the AI world, they will be supporting more of the augmenting side of things, because more often than not, when we incorporate solutions, we realize that there is some level of human intervention which may be necessary. However, when we speak to customers, and again, probably owing it to the buzzwords, there is a increasing demand to go more towards the latter, which is replace human intelligence, and just so that tasks can be done in a very automated fashion. But based on my experience, I think the answer to this question, it lies in organizations understanding what they want to do with AI and what their goal is. Because without understanding that, it'll be difficult to answer the question succinctly on either side of the point. So in order to proceed further, I'm going to just give a brief history on how AI has been applied in the world of process automation over the years. So if we look at automation in the world of software, it has existed for quite some time. It initially started off in the form of scripting, and then we had Excel macros, right? And you're able to automate certain things within your Excel screen. So that soon evolved further out and broadened its scope outside Excel, and it became desktop automation. So what desktop automation did is it enabled users to program certain automation and automate some of the tasks they do on a daily basis within the scope of their desktop. So it could be from one application to the other and so on. And then that scaled further on to develop what we call today as robotic process automation. So that's an enterprise-grade solution where automation solutions could be programmed to be scheduled to run like a batch process and interact with various applications in order to automate your task. Like, for example, if you had to go in, check your email, search for certain specific items in the email and download those items and save it in a folder and upload it to the cloud. It could be automated in a routine fashion. And then, so when we reach this point, this is where RPA it kind of stopped when it came to stop things, and we reached a point where there were only rule-based automation. So desktop automation and RPA together form that rule-based approach to automation where, and hence the term robotic, because it's just following things as you tell it to do. Right? Now, over the more recent past, with AI getting more popular, automation vendors and RPA vendors have made it more accessible for integrating AI into traditional RPA solutions. So as a result of which, the capabilities of process automation have really, really enhanced further. So now it's possible to go beyond just rule-based automation and go more towards a cognitive approach. And if you see, moving towards the giving the bot an ability to think and mimic human decision-making process. Now, with the advent of such technology, there's always one question which organizations need to answer, which is how can this be applied in our setting? So if we look at RP and AI, they kind of really marry well together. The traditional RPA skill sets out here you'll see is being able to log into applications, extract information, fill in some forms, send emails, move files, and so on. And that kind of limited an organization's ability to automate processes to only rule-based processes. Right? But now, with AI being incorporated along with RPA, there's organizations are getting the ability to improve or get the bot to understand documents, incorporate chatbots, transcribe using natural language processing, classify different types of documents, leverage computer vision to analyze videos, and also process certain semi-structured and unstructured data points. And this has really changed the world of possibilities to the extent to which solutions or processes can be automated in organizations. All right, so I'm going to give you so a few years ago, we kind of worked on a project with in the oil and gas industry, and we worked for a customer where they had, like any traditional large organization, several documents which had to be processed. And what I have here on the screen is how we kind of made this bot smarter by incorporating AI and improving its ability to mimic the human activity. So starting from the left, the use case was basically to be able to go and go to an email box where the customer would receive several documents, which included invoices, bill of ladings, and so on. And traditionally, what a human operator would have had to do is go through these documents, classify it, understand what type of document it is, and then literally copy and paste information into an ERP system. So now, in order to automate this entire process, what we did is we had to first load a taxonomy of all the different types of documents which needed to be processed. So that was basically the rule-based piece of things. So there were probably 80 to 100 different types of documents which had to be processed, and almost like 60 to 70 of them could be templatized, so which were more rule-based. And then there were like around 30 to 40 of them which could not be templatized. So our approach to it is, let's start with what could be done in a rule-based way, and then proceed towards what cannot be done in a rule-based and requires more intelligence. So once we understood how to load that taxonomy, second step would be digitization. So what that means is leveraging technologies like OCR and computer vision to actually read the PDF documents which they receive, and try to get the text associated with it and the location of where those text points are on the PDF document. This information is then used to classify the document in different types. So the two main types which we were focusing on were invoices and bill of ladings. And then we were able to, for the ones which could be templatized and rule based, we leveraged traditional regular expressions to identify the keywords. And for the ones which could not, we had to leverage ML models in order to process the location and figure out where certain key fields which we wanted to extract were located. In the case of invoice processing, we were trying to extract the invoice amount and invoice ID and so on. The next piece after that would be validation. So like any ML model, so for the ones which are rule based, they are pretty straightforward. But for the ones which are not rule based, we would focus on getting a confidence level. So and there was a threshold which we kind of defined, and after if the threshold was met, the software bot would automatically go to the last step of putting it into an SAP system. But if the threshold was not met, a human can actually validate the field if it was extracted correctly and pinpoint the location of where the field is in case if it was not correct. And this would go back as a data point for the training data set that fed the ML model. Now, everything I said so far sounds so easy. It sounds so doable, but in reality, that's not the case. There's a lot that goes to building or even identifying a solution of this type before going and running to implement it. And the reason for that is the law of diminishing returns. For the use case which I just talked to you about, we realized that for the components which were rule-based or the 60 to 70 document types which were rule-based, most of them they contributed to value towards the most productive region because rule-based. We were able to automate literally 60 to 70% of the task just by following rule-based approaches. But in order to get more towards that 100% automation, we had to kind of evaluate where the value lies in it. Because when we started going more towards the middle section of diminishing returns, we realized that there were several approaches we could take in order to ensure we don't tip over to the negative returns section. Right? One is, should we use pre-trained data for which would be basically charged on a service basis? And the second is, should we build our own algorithm, which would take time to build and train and so on? And then and the third factor is, how long is it going to take, and how long is it going to take to give the kind of returns we need and minimize those exceptions to get more towards 100% automation? Which is where, and when we did this evaluation, we kind of learned really quickly that it doesn't make sense to try to automate 100%. Because if we had to process more than 2,000 documents and we were charged on a per document basis by a service, that would soon start minimizing the return to the business. So we had to find a middle ground out there, and we kind of eventually achieved 90% automation for that entire business process. Now, the next question which one might ask while seeing this graph is, okay, this graph looks pretty straightforward and it looks like a mathematical formula, but where do you get these numbers? And the answer is, you don't get these numbers. You basically need to ask questions and make a judgment call. So in order to get to that, what we did is we looked at it from three main areas of questioning. One is it desirable to automate the business process in the first place? And the second is, how viable would it be to get towards 100% automation for that business process? The third one is, what's the feasibility of incorporating AI into the automation of the business process? To drill down a little bit more into each one of these areas, the first one, desirability, is pretty interesting because we learned that there is a certain level of tolerance the business can also accept when it comes to exceptions. Yes, there can be a human intervention that is there, where somebody can, help with the validation of the algorithm and validation and improving the training data set. However, what happens in case of false positives, right? So can the business tolerate false positives? What is the cost of or impact to the business if something goes wrong? Because if the impact to the business, if something goes wrong, is really high, then it may not be worth the risk to get towards a higher percentage of automation, and the business should probably be happy with just following a rule-based approach. In the second criteria here, the viability side of things, what we learned is, it's the first question which one would have to answer is AI necessary or is RPA sufficient? Is the 70% automation without AI good, or is it worth getting to the 90% with AI? And if it is, how are we going to go about building it? Should we build it on our own? Or should we use a cognitive service that's provided by a particular vendor? Because the determination of that answer kind of directly impacts the ROI for that particular use case. And then finally, from a feasibility standpoint, the main question we want to ask is, do we have the right training data set? Because if there's a lot of variability and the training data set does not represent what the bot might face while processing real-time documents, then soon you're going to be having the same level of exceptions as a rule-based approach. And what that means is the AI is adding very little value to the process automation. So to sum it up, what I would recommend here is, it's important to view, before entering into applying AI to a process automation solution, to view the situation from all three perspectives and find that middle ground, which will help devise a pragmatic solution. So coming back to today's topic, which is making bots smarter, based on what I said so far, there are three imperatives to making bots. One is to constantly monitor advancements in the field of intelligent automation. With the growing need for AI in organizations and RPA being an easy application for AI, the vendors are constantly evolving the way the tool works and how accessible AI is to RPA. And having a sound understanding of these advancements will help you easily understand how it can be applied in your organization. The second is evaluate, for the use cases which you identify as opportunities for desirability, viability, and feasibility. Because if not, you may risk, doing too much and getting into negative returns. Then finally, it is about understanding the real goals. I know we started off today's topic with how smart is your bot, but in reality, when it comes to practically applying AI and RPA to your organization, the question that organizations need to answer is, how smart do you need your bot to be? And with that, I think I'm going to go through addressing questions which you might have for me today.
Thank you, Vishakh. It doesn't look like there's any questions right now. As you said, if you have any, please put them in the chat. Or you may unmute yourself at this time as well to ask them out loud. But while we wait for that, I'll do some housekeeping for now. But after this, it's going to be from 11 to 12 today. Please join our sponsors in the technology showcase. DQE Communications will be presenting on SD1 for your business, and our other sponsors will be in booths to connect with you to answer any questions that you might have. I'm putting the link to the DQE presentation in the chat field right now. Another reminder is to check out the virtual event bag to enter to win some prizes here this week from our sponsors as well. And lastly, to join us at noon for business as usual as we feature the closing keynote, Dr. Peter Angeline from the Hershey Company. This is a separate registration, so if you wanted to attend this, please make sure that you register for that session as well. So as I went through all of those, Vishakh, I don't see any questions. Do you have any last words you want to say?
Actually, I would say I would just put in my email in the chat as well. So in case if anyone has any questions or need to follow up, I should be available through the email and should be able to go from there.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much for presenting. And thank you everyone for joining us today. As I mentioned, please check out our sponsors, and we hope you can join us again for business as usual at 12 noon as well.
Great. Thank you. Good job, V.